There we go. I'm gonna post the announcement. Posting on Blue Sky. Posting in our Discord.
Oh, thank goodness for noise suppression. One of my alarms went off.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear it at all. Hold on. One more announcement. Where's the office hours? Can never find things. There we go. Hello. Do we have people?
Greetings, people of the world.
Hello. We got Verban Stash. And of course we got the Schnopit from Grand. Hello everyone. We should be live, people should be piling in.
Hi.
Hi. So let me open the Discord questions. So I have them ready.
Oh, I wonder what Discord questions we have today.
Discord questions. Okay.
Yes.
Hello Grand, hello Alex, hello Verbrand. Oh, we already have like a question from Grand. So I think we're good to start. We got a few people piled in. So hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Resonance, which is sort of like an office hour / podcast. I'm Frooxius. I'm here with Syra from our engineering team, and we're here to answer, whatever questions you have about the Resonite, whether it's technical ones, whether it's, the philosophy of the platform, where it's going, or it's just in general, whatever you want to ask. Feel free to ask here. Some of the questions we might, say, for example, if they're like the moderation, we might be give you a general answer and direct you to moderation office hours, which actually happened a little bit before this one, so you have to wait until the next week for that one, but we'll do our best to kind of, answer whatever questions you might have. If you want to ask a question, make sure to put a question mark in the chat, that way it kind of pops on our thing. And make sure we don't lose it. It also, if you're asking follow-up questions, provide us context so we know what it relates to, because we might answer a bunch of different questions in the meanwhile and forget what yours originally was. I think it's kind of all the basic stuff. We also have some announcements today. There's actually a few, one of the big ones I kind of teased. As part of the performance updates, the next major system, or pretty much the last major system that needs to be replaced, is the audio system. And I finally decided on a name for it, so I'll tell you in a bit. After a word from our sponsor.
No one.
No one. We're just here.
I bet that scared you. I bet that scared some of you.
It's just it's almost like a phrase at this point. Grant is already asking Schnopit, I don't know, do you have anything? There's actually one thing I was gonna mention, with Schnopit, thing that makes me explode, and I kind of talked about it last stream a bit. Sometimes when people are it's almost like a thing, taking this question too seriously. But I had one where one thing that makes me disintegrate is when people go oh, just do it quick, it's 5 minutes. When they want a feature. And one thing that people don't realize is it can take 5 minutes to initially implement something, but then it can take weeks to support it and fix all the issues with it. And that's oftentimes a cost that people don't realize. And I kind of wish more people did that. So that's one of the things that makes me disintegrate.
And oftentimes something taking 5 minutes
it takes
is
longer.
Unacceptable when you need to do 500 of that 5-minute thing, right?
Yeah, there's another thing.
Ideally, it should maybe, I don't know, put in the legwork to make it take 5 seconds to make the thing that you want to make if you need to make it 500 times, because then you don't have to spend 500 years doing 500 minute 500 minute tasks. Well, it turns into a 500-minute task, I bet.
I mean, sometimes we do the thing where we'll essentially make it So like we don't like, implement each individual feature, but we will say this is gonna be done as part of this bigger system. It's gonna kind of solve it implicitly. And the reason why we do that is because it's more efficient that way. And the analogy I like to use for that is like, imagine, shopping. So like you're at home and, somebody goes and they're like, I want some soda. And, you get into the car, like, you get dressed, you get into the car, you drive to the shop, you buy soda, you get back, and then it'll be like, I want some popcorn. So you get dressed again, you go into the car, you drive there, buy the popcorn, you get back, you give them the popcorn, and they're like, I want some toast. So you get dressed again, you drive, to the thing, and it's like, if you do that for every individual item you would like, you might want to do, like the time you spend, dressing up and driving there and going through the store and paying and going back, it adds up if you do it for each individual item. But if you like, build a shopping list, you're like, okay, these are all the things we want, then you can, we just do the dressing up once, you drive to the store once, you do efficient run through the store, and you return, and you save a lot of time, and it can be way more efficient approach, to like get the stuff you need done than, just doing it like individually for each one. So even though like, you say like for the shopping example, say like it takes you like 20 minutes to do, if you do it 20 minutes for each of the items on your shopping list and you want to buy 100 items, that adds up quick, because like all of that is kind of spent just doing stuff kind of around it. So there's like multiple reasons, but this is definitely like one of them, and one of the reasons like why we as a team, because like we're a pretty small team, we need to be very efficient with our time. So we will oftentimes kind of push away doing things like, even if it takes like 5 minutes for each individual item, there's, oftentimes there's multiple requests that can be kind of handled through a bigger system. So instead of like, just doing that like one small one, we kind of plan to do like a bigger one down the line, which is gonna, do hundreds of items like in one go, and it's got to be much more maintainable, which means we also have to like, spend less time, maintaining the item and dealing with issues it causes, and just being like more efficient on our time. So that pretty much answers Grant's Schnopit question. So this one. Yes.
Can I answer that one actually?
Which one?
The Schnopit.
Yes, what do you have for Schnopit?
When your fucking ribs explode.
Don't
sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think we're much sure.
Okay. But yeah, also that's kind of why I didn't make the last one, guys. My ribs actually one of my ribs on my right side is actually I'm so sorry. I'm so tired. One of my ribs on my right side is actually like, I think it's like the cartilage is like disconnected, so it's just kind of like hanging there and like floating around and kind of rubbing up against the other ones and kind of sliding over them. If I bend the wrong way, it's like a xylophone. I play like a C note or whatever. So, yeah, I'm mostly fine, but it is occasionally stabby, and it does kind of screw with my sleep a little bit. So if I seem tired or cranky, that's why.
See, the thing is, everybody's doing rep hacking, and because of that, Cyrus' ribs exploded.
Yeah, it's all the rep hacking you did. That's why my ribs exploded. But it's all your fault.
I hope like it gets better soon. But at least like we have you today.
Oh, yeah, no. I wanted to join today at least to if nothing else to at least tell people that.
Yes. And if there's extra crankiness, blame the ribs. Anyway, with that, like that should get like the Schnopit question out of the way. So do we should do the PSAs first?
Sure.
Because like there's gonna be like a bunch of questions, and I feel like a bunch of people kind of like came in to learn. they came to learn. So what the name might be, at least maybe some, I don't know. But, so as many of you know, the for the big performance update, we had to kind of move a bunch of the systems we have fully into Froox engine in order, to have like full control over it and to kind of like eliminate weird kind of entanglement with Unity. And there were two systems that were like, kind of tangled with Unity significantly, which was the particle system, which is now resolved with photon dust, and the other system is the audio system. And that's pretty much the one that's gonna be, worked on next. It's probably gonna be a smaller amount of work than Photon does. Like I'm pretty confident in that. It's still gonna take a bit, but it'll essentially replace Unity's kind of system that's handling, stuff like figuring out which sounds should be playing based on your position in the world, doing the spatialization, and so on. We're gonna have our own system doing that. And that way, like, we kind of remove the dependence on the Unity, and we also get, like, full control over it, like, how it works. And I have the thing, like, I've already talked about this, like, on the previous, like, resonances. I talked, like, how is this gonna work under the hood? What is it actually gonna do? I have it, like, thought out, like, from a technical perspective, but I have this problem. Whenever I'm making, new major system, I find it like I literally cannot really work on it, like actually start like coding it and doing stuff, even though I have like all the technical details thought out. I just have like a mental block that until I name it, I can't work on it. It's like really like just doesn't work. So I was like figuring out a name, and I had like a big list, and I'll maybe show the list later too. But I had like lots of names, and it kind of came down to like two names. One cool sounding serious name, and one kind of meme name. And part of me was already kind of like leaning, we're like we need like at least like one funny name, like, so I was kind of screw it, let's do the meme name. And then I talked to Probable Prime, one of our team members on the engineering, and he was like, do the meme name. And it pretty much like, that pretty much like made me make the decision, like it like tipped me over the edge. So the new name for our upcoming, and also before I tell you the name, there's a bit of a lore with the name too, which makes the name make more sense in a very memey way. So the name of the upcoming audio system is it's audio.
Yeah.
That's how it's gonna be named. It's this is a perfectly fine name. Like we can just be we have a new audio engine, and its name is Audio. It's not gonna be confusing at all.
Yeah, it's the audio engine.
It's the audio engine, which means soon there will be audio.dll in their files. Oh, there we go. And now for the piece of lore. So this is clearly kind of, because a lot of our on the team and in the community were kind of furries, and this is part, like we're kind of like, I like to have like, some fun. And this is kind of, very, very kind of inspired name. The reason for it is like, if you think about how your ears work, inside your ear, there's the cochlea. And actually, maybe I should pull out a diagram. Let me see. Do I have is there a diagram? I should have prepared this ahead of time, but here we go. So inside of your ear, fortunately, it's very, very, very quick to import stuff into Resonite, so I can just do it live. Inside of your ear, there's like this like organ called cochlea, and inside of it, there's tiny little hairs. And, as the sound kind of, transfers the vibrations to the cochlea, the hairs, they're like in different lengths, and they will vibrate, and it will send electrical impulses to your brain, and each of the hairs is like, sensitive to different range of frequencies. And what this means is you literally your ability to hear is literally because your ears are furry on the inside. And everybody's ears are furry on the inside, and that's how we hear. Therefore, the furry name is the perfect name for the audio engine.
Woo!
Yay! I'm very proud of myself. So yeah, this is gonna be the name. It's serious in a non-serious way. We're just gonna have like, you know, some fun with it. It's also like because of the Resonite community, like people love memes, you know, people love like silly stuff. So I'm kind of excited like what people will do. One of the things that like when I was talking about this with Prime, he even suggested somebody's probably gonna make like a first one for it or something, you know, some art, and it's gonna be fun and goofy so on. So like I'm kind of giddy, like, you know, see like how this is gonna go and like how people are gonna have like, you know, what kind of fun people will have. There's also like another reason, like, and it was actually another probably Prime's reasoning for this, is because with the current kind of climate, like a lot of companies, they're kind of like, you know, pushing down diversity and stuff like that, like they're trying to be more normal. And because of that, like, you know, it feels like more important to like be like, you know, we can be weird, and being weird is normal. Like, you know, it's like people are goofy, people are creative, and that's all okay. And that was another kind of reasoning, like, where I was like let's just do this, let's have fun with it. Is also the last system that needs to be done before, you know, the spliffening, so that's kind of like, you know, is a good opportunity to do it too. So yes, this is the new name, and I hope you people will enjoy it, and I hope you will enjoy having this file on your system soon. TM.
It's coming. It's gonna be there.
It's gonna be there. It'll be there. It'll be on everyone. And
It's
remember, right now, the way you're hearing me is because your ears are furry on the inside. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Woo!
Anyways, so with that out of the way, we can maybe get to the questions. Actually, no, we might have, and yes, Bredos, yes, one more thing. This is gonna show up in the logs. If there's any exceptions with the audio system, that will be in your logs. So be prepared. Yes. So I do have like one actually other PSA. I do have like some other topics I want to cover like later, but I'm gonna get through some questions first because we already got like a bunch piling up. This is a quick one. We made an announcement earlier this week that essentially like a while back, it was like a few months ago, we made an announcement that we're gonna deprecate the graphical Linux build because it's not maintained, it doesn't really work properly. And we don't have the time and the resources to kind of, you know, unfortunately, to spend on it. Because of that, for a graphical version, we're going to be relying on Photon. And in order to, like, you know, facilitate that, like, we actually, like, Syra actually had, like, unified headless, so a single install can be used both for Windows and Linux, because headless will still be available for Linux, you know, that server software. We're keeping that, and there's like not really much issues with it being on Linux. Plus, it's a little more kind of important there, so that's not affected. The only change that's gonna happen tomorrow is that the Linux depot on Steam is gonna be removed, which means if you host on Linux and you get, like, you know, your headless from there, you will get it from the Windows branch instead. The files on both of the branches have actually been identical, which means this pretty much should have pretty much zero effect on this. Like, there shouldn't be any, like, probably even any changes you need to do, like, you should automatically switch to it, but if something happens, you need to update your script. For example, you're explicitly getting the Linux branch, you might need to switch that. Otherwise, like, things are just gonna work as normal. But yeah, this is gonna be happening. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows as well. And with that PSA out of the way, we can get to the questions. We're gonna do ones from the Discord first. There's a few of them. The first question on Discord is from Mimi, and they're asking, will Resonite get on the MetaQuest store? I mean, we would like to. It's probably gonna take a bit. Depends, like, you know, if you want it, because question is, do you want it, for the desktop? Like, because I don't know if current MetaQuest or if it covers like PC VR apps or not. Because I know like that it used to, but I haven't like really kept up with it. We would like to get in there. If it means having standalone version, that's a little bit more difficult because we need to have standalone version first, which is eventual goal, but like we need to do a bunch of different things before we get there. Like for example, like stuff like optimizations and then having content segregation and so on. The next question is from Ultrawide Gamer. What does the last number in the Resonite version mean? So the last number, it's essentially the minute of the day. We use, for our versioning, we use like version that's essentially a timestamp. You have the year, you have the month, you have the day, and the last number is the minute of the day. And that indicates the minute of the day when the build was made. So, like if you make another build, if you made another build a minute later, then the number is going to increment. It's going to be larger than 1. Also, the larger number, it's something like 1440 or something like that, which is the number of minutes in a single day, and then it flips over. So the reason for this is, it's very predictable. It's very easy to tell which build is newer than the other one because the number is always going to be bigger. Eventually want to switch it so instead of the version being the timestamp of the compilation, it's going to be timestamp of the commit for that build. And that will make it like if we need to rebuild it, or if there's multiple builds that need to happen from the same commit, they will all have the same build number. But otherwise things will not change. The next question, that's actually just answering. Next question is from Spoby? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Hey man, this question is more philosophical side, but really, if for some reason there was also a massive inflow of people on player base, how could it affect Resonite? So, there's a few things, like it's gonna depend on a number of variables, but most immediately, having lots of new users means, people need help, so probably, mentors will need to will have their work cut out for them. Generally the community, like we've kind of had cases like that in the past where there were a lot of people, and usually people got really busy, just helping everyone, and people get tired because it gets exhausting. But we're very grateful for everybody who kind of helps new users and gets them comfortable on the platform. The other aspects are technical. So for example, what happens to the servers, because now there's increased load. The way our server infrastructure works, we can pretty much provision a larger amount of instances and a larger amount of database throughput for things, so that will that can help deal with the increased load. It does require some manual intervention. There's some automatic scaling, but it has limits, which means we'll probably go there and be okay, is this getting overutilized? Do we need to increase the limit for now? Which brings another question, which is it's easy to scale the servers, but also there's additional cost with that. So it's also a question, are the new players signing up for supporting Resonite, ideally on Stripe or on Patreon, so we can kind of compensate for it. If there was smaller conversion and there were lots of new players but we're not signing up to support Resonite, then we might need to deal with that situation in some ways. Make sure things, we can kind of keep running things and keep the lights on. But we'll cross that bridge when I kind of come over it. So far, we've actually had more than average conversion on new players. I think Bobby kind of worked out the details, and it's I think it's been another 4% or something like that, when the typical is lower than that. I forget the exact numbers. So things are kind of promising that way, but it's hard to predict how exactly things will go because they can go lots of different ways. I'm also just gonna move this out of the way now. But yeah, it's also the moderation. Veer and Canadian get answer the question, from the moderation perspective. They'll probably start onboarding a lot more moderators, scaling up the team, make sure we can kind of deal, with a sudden influx of players. So part of it is like, like we scale things up in lots of different ways, technical, like, mentors, like moderation. And we kind of figure out like, we'll see like what's happening and make adjustments on the platform based on that.
Oh, Froox.
Yes.
Can I read this next one?
Which one is it?
It's
I'm
the
still doing
last
the
one from the
Discord
Discord.
ones. Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So Red asks, sorry about this being a long one, but the detail is needed. I saw that the data model rework is planned for the performance update. This will probably break ref hacking, breaking quite a few Avatar systems auto installers. Is there a plan to add arbitrary component access via Flux, which also means hard permissions and no hard permissions are needed before Flux accessing components arbitrarily, for the rework or quickly after? The main reason is manually dragging and dropping fields off of an inspector would be very annoying, and new users wanting to add things like the avatar poser extremely confusing.
Ref
I'm going to tell you right
hacking,
now.
ref hacking Schnuppets, take 3.
We have done a couple PSAs on ref hacking on this again, but it looks like we're gonna have to do it again.
We have to do it. So, yeah.
So, one, I'm gonna tell you right out the gate: do not rely on ref hacking. The reason why we tell you not to rely on it is precisely because there may not be a replacement for you. If we break ref hacking and we don't have component access, that's tough.
Yes.
Second thing is if you are using ref hacking, we're not going to auto upgrade your things for you. It's just not something we can do. So if it breaks, even if there is a new alternative, like that's officially supported, all of your old ref hacking stuff, that's going to stay old and broken. We're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about it breaking like Avatar's auto installers, make them not use ref hacking like right now, because otherwise they will break. And yeah, if you're using it for a convenience feature, sorry, that's just it's gonna break.
Yes.
I would honestly say like the way that I've found to kind of like get around these is to just put a little bit more effort into, educating the player on like what they need to do, making sure it's very easily digestible, rather than trying to automate the process right now through methods that are 1,000,000% going to break in the future. So just put in that extra little effort to just make it nice, even though it takes like an extra couple steps, and that will achieve much the same effect.
I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. Is like the reason we give you the warning is precisely because we can't guarantee that it'll keep working, and we can't guarantee there will be a replacement when it does break, and it will break at some point. We're like not breaking it intentionally, but some things change, and that's gonna, break how you do those things. And ultimately, like, you have to realize, like, this is ref hacking is not a debate. Like I mentioned last time, it's kind of like, running with scissors. And if you run with scissors and you get warned, you can get hurt, you can get injured. It doesn't matter. Like you can debate all you want about it and be like, oh, like maybe it should be like, when I run with scissors so I don't get hurt. Scissors are sharp. If you run with them and you trip, you're gonna get hurt. Like there's no amount of debating and discussing and pleading with the scissors that you could do that will make them not hurt you. So it ultimately is, do you consider the warning, like, or do you not, and then you get hurt? And the reason we give you the warning is because we know that will happen, and we don't want that to happen to you, and we want you to understand the risks. So if you don't, and this part is a little bit frustrating because it feels a lot of people just don't understand the risks. And part of me wants to be like, if you want to play with it, play with it, but understand the risks when you do. But a lot of times, like, it feels like people play with it and they try to ignore the risks, or try to think like something can be changed. It's just how it is, and I don't really know how else like we could explain it.
Yeah.
But
Like,
yeah,
and tangentially, I don't know actually if the data model rework is slated for the performance update right away, isn't it?
not right away, no. But there's like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not even that. Like, there might be like lots of things that will end up like breaking it. Because we're kind of like relying
Yeah.
on like implementation details of some things. The point is like it doesn't matter. Like we've had cases before where people are relying on something that's not an official feature. We tell people don't use it, and then like we're making some unrelated changes, and they actually end up like breaking those. And like we're not even thinking like oh like, that it would actually break those things, but it did. It happens, and that's the reason like when we know this is system that is brittle is likely to break, we want to like make sure you're informed. And like if you're like ignoring that, you're doing like a disservice to yourself and to other people. Like you won't be kind of relying on stuff you build with it. So please take the warning to heart. Please try to like understand like why we warn against it.
Um, yeah, like it doesn't matter if like, oh man, that thought went out of my head. I'm so sorry.
Hmm.
I had a thought and it went out of my head.
Again, because I was asking, like, it's saying like there's no alternative. Like we understand that, but like that doesn't change that the system will break. Like I said, like
Yeah.
you keep trying to like argue with this and debate it, and it's like this kind of feature is more like it's cause and effect. It's like if you run with scissors, you'll get hurt, and if you have no alternative to running to scissors, and you really want to with scissors, then you're taking on the risk. But like it doesn't like the fact that there's no alternative to it doesn't change that it'll break and it'll break your things. Um, like, I honestly, I just at this point I don't know how to kind of explain this because like it's not something like we can control, and we try to keep, like warn people, avoid this. If you don't, like honestly, I don't know what to
There's
do.
nothing really, there's nothing we really can do
Yes.
because it would it would take so much development time to try and support that kind of thing officially that like just it's just pointless because we're going to have an official system. So please just wait for the official system. There are a million and one other ways to do the thing that you probably want to do right now that you don't know about. I guarantee it.
Oftentimes, like there's like better ways to kind of do things, and that's the part of the reason we give you the warning is like so I'm wanting to build something long term. Don't rely on this. If you want it to be long term, find an alternative approach, or find like a way to kind of redesign your thing, or ask for features to like be able to do it. There's gonna be some limitations, and if you hack around those limitations, you're essentially going outside of the safe area where we can ensure that things will keep working and that they will have alternatives. Like it's
That's not a
like no,
guarantee.
like that's the thing. Like you keep asking for like there we can give you better transition with the nature of how it works. We can't give you that. Like it's just the problem is the system doesn't have, it's not an official feature. Like honestly, I just
It's a
I
byproduct. It's a byproduct of the way that the inspector is implemented. That's
yes,
literally all it is. If you didn't have the inspector the way it is right now, you wouldn't be able to ref hack. That's all there is to it. And we
yeah,
can't support that because it's not real.
yes. Like like again, like it doesn't matter how much you debate it, like it will break, and we cannot guarantee there will be a replacement at the time because it can break for like unrelated changes. We've had this happen before. Um, it's honestly like at this point either heed the warning or you're gonna get bit by it. But when you get bit by it, don't don't say that we didn't warn you. I
Yeah, one last thing. I won't harp on this much more. Just one last thing though. If you're doing it and you're making things and you're like, I'll just fix it when it breaks, and you're releasing those things, consider that people will save those things to their inventory as well outside of whatever public folder you may have. And now suddenly there's just this thing that is going to break that is proliferated through a ton of people's inventories, and they're not going to know how to update it, and they're not going to know like what's going on. And it's a recipe for confusion.
It's also, I just want to add like one more point, because like the goal isn't necessarily to stop people from rev hacking, it's to understand the risks. And the reason I'm really frustrated with this is because it seems people don't understand the risk, and they try to like, debate with it, and they try to like, be like, well, just do that or just do this. And like, they don't realize, like the reason we're giving you the warning is because like we can't give you those things. There's limitations on what we can do. Like, say, if we had infinite time, we could, eventually upgrade those systems, but we don't have infinite time, it's not realistic. And that's the main reason, like we just can't give you those guarantees. And if you don't like, it's kind of like, why I'm like, if you want to play with it, like, play with it. If you want to build things, really want to build with things, is it like, like we're not gonna, we're not gonna ban you or punish you or anything like that, but you have to understand it will break, and there won't be a transition, and there might not be a replacement system at the time. It's what it is. Either I don't know. Honestly, I just at this point I don't know.
That's all we can really say about it. It's
Yeah.
just like do it in the comfort of your own home. But don't cry when you got broken glass on your floor.
Yeah. Like if you do end up like getting hurt by it, like, like we did warn you. And that's kind of all we can say.
Oh boy.
We should.
I hope we don't have to drive that home a fourth time.
Yeah. Let's move to some other questions.
Yeah, let's move on.
Honestly, it's one of the most difficult things. Just get people to understand. Anyways, so moving on from this, we do have another question. Grand UK is asking, also a real question. If log doesn't say world state has been dumped after session crash, is it still dumped? Most likely not. Like if it's like a hard crash and there's log no crash dumped, then we probably didn't get dumped. The logging happens, pretty much right after it gets dumped. So it's probably not there, I'm sorry. Check the Foxwater, did you call it Rapture? I don't know what it's relating to. Next question's from Ozzy. Here's a question I was wondering. How do you personally detect if object with a collider is inside another object with collider? This was a really simple problem during MMC entry that became a lot more complex somehow. Well, so it kind of depends, like, what do you mean by the object being inside another object? Because, like, there's multiple ways that can happen. The easiest way, with colliders, so, like, you have, like, one object, you have another object. Like, would you consider this, to be inside of object, like, if they just intersect? If this is what you want, then you can do it, for example, with active colliders. You can see, if, like, you can have, like, a trigger, for example, and the collider detect, if there's, like, collision going on. The physics engine resolves, collisions like that, like, pretty efficiently. The bigger problem is if you want to like, consider only this to be inside when it's fully contained in the object, that's where it becomes a fair bit more complex, because figuring that out, especially for arbitrary shapes, can be very difficult. If you do, something like for example, box versus sphere, there's algorithms for that you can run, check if the sphere is, fully contained in the box. That might be like easy enough, but if you wanted to do that for a mesh, for example, say like you have like some kind of mesh shape, then it becomes a lot more difficult because like you're not even guaranteed. Say we wanted to check if something's inside of this. Right now this is not connected. It doesn't even have inside. So like there's not really a concept of like is this inside? Because like this is technically the outside. Now if you do connect it, so it kind of has inside. That on itself is kind of complex to figure out. If you wanna see like if something's inside arbitrary mesh, you have to make sure it actually has inside first. You have to determine what that inside is, and then you can do tests against it. It's also like complex because it's this is like, for example, concave. So like it can be like around here where you have this concave region that makes things more complicated. A simple way to do it that might not be fully accurate would be to use bounding boxes. The problem with the bounding boxes, they are axis aligned. So say like if you wanted to check if this is inside of this. I'm actually gonna make this smaller. So if you have this, if you're checking this bounding box is inside of this bounding box, that's easy, like you just check if it's contained or not, if each point of the bounding box is contained. Problem is, if you rotate this, the bounding box for the rotated thing, it has to be aligned with the axis, which means it's going to look like this. It's going to actually be bigger than the object itself. So even though the shape is fully contained, the bounding box might actually exceed. And it kind of becomes, a lot more kind of complicated that way. So it depends a bit what you mean. It depends, what kind of shapes are you dealing with exactly. There's like ways to do it, but yeah, like it is definitely one of those things that can become like very complex problem, and usually the approach for that is you you need to like kind of simplify the system you're using. You need to kind of rethink how it works, and see like if you can like achieve the same result that you want with a different like approach. The next question's from DevHammer. What do you personally think would be a great protoflag's Hello World program? Actually, I'm not sure. Like, you can do Hello World, but just literally making a string display, so that's simple enough. I would probably actually no. There's one thing I oftentimes do. Well, actually, I don't do it like super oftentimes, but like whenever I show like protoflags, I'll just grab a material of something and drive it to be rainbow. Because, it has very strong immediacy. It's like just a few nodes. You just have a time node, you have the hue node, and you just drive something in the world. And it immediately, it starts making something, change color in the world, which has a, very visual impact. So I think that might be a good one. But do you have any ideas, Sire? Like, what do you like as a Hello World?
That's actually kind of like what I recommend. I also recommend like make a box move up and down. That's also a good one.
Yes. Yeah, like something simple that just drives, some basic values. Like I think those are great starters. It kind of shows you a few concepts while being like very simple to do, and you can kind of build around and make it do more complex things. Next question. I'm not sure if this is... Oh, no, there's a question there. Jack the Fox author at OZ, I've had to do a few times now. I use a collision stay and reset timer when object I'm colliding with I care about. It's a bit expensive, but sort of best I could come up with. And impose now to get collision events at once. Once we have collections, Froox, will there be something that would be possible once we get collection support? Yeah, like with collection support, you can just query the list of, intersecting colliders, so that will make those checks very simple to do. There's also like we do have the colliders to use a tracker, but we don't have like arbitrary one, because usually you want to kind of do some filtering on those. You might use, on collision start and collision end if you're checking for specific collider. Otherwise, like, you need to kind of count them, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, like once we have collections, it's gonna make it way easier to just check, which ones we have in there. Next question is from Alex2PI. One question puzzles me. I heard sometime from you that converting Gaussian splatting to mesh would defeat purpose of creating them in the first place. What if instead of turning splats into mesh, create primitive procedural colliders. It would be how convex hull generation control works in game. I think it could be an interesting idea, maybe not for all splats, however, on those floors of larger objects. Well, it kind of, so people like were asking like for mesh, for rendering them. So if you wanted to convert them into like, convex hull for rendering, like that's even worse than the mesh because you just end up with blobs that don't really look like much the original thing. If you're thinking about making, colliders, then there is a different, there's a whole different thing. And I do think that might be actually an interesting approach is, just throw it at, convex hull decomposition. You probably wouldn't want to do just a single convex hull because in my experience, a lot of the splats, you might have the actual object here, but there's like, lots of splats around. So like if you made, and this is like, how big the user is, and you're looking at this item, and if you make convex hull, you end up like, with collider that's like super huge. So that wouldn't work super well. But if you do convex hull decomposition, then maybe it does like, something a bit smarter, but also like, there might be still like, a lot of them all around, so I'd probably have to try it with a bunch of different ones. I might add it like, because I'll be releasing Gaussian splatting support very soon, pretty much very likely next week. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. But I might add like something like that, because we do have integration with the convex hull decomposition. Right now, what implementation does, it actually converts it to a point cloud collider, which doesn't have like, any surface you can grab, but like you can still grab it by the splats and move it around, so that kind of works okay enough. But yeah, we can experiment with it, see how well it works. And next question is from Marty SH. How's the Gaussian splat support going? It's actually going really well. So I do have I pretty much do have like the initial version ready. I was originally like wanting to push it like earlier this week, but I figured like, it's end of MMC. I'm not gonna push any builds. People are finishing their things. So I'll push it like sometime next week. And I've also been working on adding VRAM compression support, which I actually have like most of the heavy stuff like ready. I implemented like all the kind of like foundation for it, and I'm gonna be integrating with the asset variant system and adjusting the rendering, so that will make it so the Gaussian splats take significantly less VRAM, than like if they just raw, because they can be very, very big. Like for example, 3 million splats that will take almost a gigabyte of your VRAM. It's very heavy, but with the compression, oops, I got the camera. With the compression, they'll take like a fraction of VRAM. So I think that's kind of important too, and it's gonna come at some later point, not like too much later, but maybe like a few days later. So yeah, like it's coming very soon. I might talk a little bit about like one of the algorithms that I integrated, because I found it super cool. It's called like k-means clustering, and it's something that the reference implementation I'm using uses for the compression of the splats, particularly for like the spherical harmonics, where it essentially makes like a palette, but like the algorithm can be used for lots of different things, and I've integrated it with texture processing, because it can do like kind of neat things. I'll talk about it a little bit more like once we get through some more questions. Next question is from Epic Easton 197. Once Unity is removed, how much of Unity will actually be left? Well, if Unity is removed, then it's gone. It's gonna, so there's like two things. We, for the big performance update, the initial part of it, like, that we're working right now, we're gonna split Froox engine and Unity, but Unity is still gonna be there, but essentially all of the Froox engine is gonna be outside of it. It's gonna be a separate process, and Unity is gonna only be handling mostly the rendering that's gonna be sent over inter-process communication. So Unity is still gonna be there doing the rendering, but it'll actually not be responsible for running, any of the actual Froox engine code. So all of that, like, it's gonna be stripped away from it, and it's gonna be sort of like, just render is just receiving the data that's coming over the, shared memory. Once once like we have our custom rendering engine, where I've just currently codenamed source, they'll replace Unity completely, which means Unity is just gonna be poof, it's gonna be gone. Alex 2PI, quantum photon dust entanglement theory paper when? I don't know, make one. I don't actually. What would it mean, quantum photon dust entanglement? With particles.
Quantum photo disentanglement.
I mean, there's a language called. I was looking into this like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. There's a language called Q Sharp from Microsoft for quantum programming. Make integration do quantum protoflux. I don't know.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, quantum. Also, thank you, Bobtastich? I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
Bobtastish.
Bobtastich. For the raid, thank you. It probably took us a bit because like we had a bunch of talks. Next questions from Modern Baloney. I'm excited for the audio update. So after this, it's going to be a reworking Froox engine integration with Unity. At least that's the way I understand it, right? Yes. Once the audio engine is done, it's essentially going to be something I like to call the splitting, where how Froox engine communicates to Unity is going to be reworked, and so it can be pulled into its own process. So the audio engine is pretty much the last major system that kind of needs to be, fully under our control. After that, like the work is going to be on actually pulling them apart. Next question's from Alnimihim. Is asking, what is the numbers on your color? So this is the heart rate, and this is HRV, which is the heart rate variability. I don't have the heart tracker on, so it's actually just showing bogus values right now.
It's actually showing Froox's version number.
No, it's not the version number. You see my heart rate is 0. It's because like I'm resting my heart for a bit.
Yeah, you're an alpha. That's like 0 point whatever.
No, I'm just resting my heart for a bit. Like, it gets tired like beating all the time, so it needs to take a little bit of a rest.
That's true, that's true.
Some discussion in the chat. Verban schnappet, or what are you saying? Oh, it's the schnuppet. That's the thing that Grant says that makes us disintegrate.
Yeah, it's that like XNOPYT word that you see occasionally. It's pronounced schnuppet.
Schnuppet. Next question is from Bressert. What's the motivation behind the inward naming restrictions? The main reason for it is to reserve, some characters for like future syntax. So say like we want to add new features, for example, some more dynamic lookups, or maybe like, whatever we want to come up with in the future, we want to have a bunch of characters that we can use, in order to like, facilitate those features. Because if we let you use every single other character, and now we want to introduce new features, now we have no characters left because we cannot make the assumption that nobody's using them. So that's kind of part of it. The other one is like to make it more readable to people, because oftentimes like dynamic variables are used to exchange content, which means like if you use like some really hard like weird characters or something hard to use, that might make it harder to like interop with things. And dynamic variables, as part of them, is like designed for interop. And like having more restricted set kind of enforces that. Next, Power Pub is asking, Froox, what is your favorite show? I got a bunch. The one I most recently watched that I really like is called Pantheon. It has 2 seasons. I don't want to say too much. It has to do a lot with kind of this, but more sci-fi, more like, I'm gonna say mind upload. It deals with mind upload. I'm not gonna tell you more. I recommend watching it. It's a really good show. It's very well written. It's very clever in lots of ways. There is a scene in a second episode that is a bit shocking, like, content warning. It's one of the few times where I was watching it where I had to pause it and kind of process what I just saw. And I kind of liked it because, like, it doesn't happen too often, but I was just like, whoa, that just happened. They just showed that thing. And it's a thing I've read about in sci-fi books before, like happening, but just seeing it on screen was visceral. And that's also, like, I'm gonna say that's the worst of it that you're gonna see in the regard. So, like, even if you get a bit like uh from the second episode, you've already been through the worst of it. I recommend watching the rest of it. It's a really good show. There's a lot of good sci-fi elements of it, and there's a lot of like cool action scenes, and there's a lot of like cool themes and problems it kind of deals with, and there's also like a lot of emotional things, which in some cases are worse than the more graphical stuff, but it's a good show. Watch it. What about you, Sarah?
I've I actually have three that come to mind. One of them is a movie though. Um, one of my favorite TV shows as of recent is Castlevania and Castlevania
Ah,
Nocturne. Those are some of the best like storytelling and like animation that I've seen in like a TV show to date, because it breaks the mold of like, it's not quite anime, it's kind of like Western anime Castlevania. Um, I think it's actually like a French studio that does it. I can't tell. But it's just it's so good. The storytelling is so good. The character development is so good. The animation, the it's just wham, awesome fight scene. Wham, awesome animation. Wham, oh my god, it's another awesome fight scene that looks like it should be in a movie. Jesus H Christ.
ooh.
You should really watch that one.
Do you need
Um,
to have played the games to like watch it, or
no,
is it just
it actually it does a good job of um not needing you to like understand the Castlevania lore. I
okay?
don't understand the Castlevania lore, and I love it. Um, my other one that I really like recently, um, actually this was a little bit ago. I like Foundation.
Oh,
Foundation's a really
Foundation's
good.
good too.
It's a really good
Yes,
sci-fi show. If you think you know sci-fi, this breaks the mold of sci-fi. It's
it's
good.
it's funny because like there's some of the best, like it's based on the books by Isaac Asimov, but some of the best bits in the show are actually not from the books. Like they came up with it for
Yeah,
the show to make it actually possible to film, and like I like enjoy those elements. It's a very
and
good show. There should be third season
yeah,
like this year, I think.
I haven't even seen
It's
the second one.
what?
I know.
You're,
I'm
you're,
sorry.
you're,
I gotta go watch it. Oh my god.
you're saying this is your favorite show and you haven't even seen the second season.
uh, yeah. And then the last one I can think of is the Dune. I love Dune.
Dune, okay. Wait, Dune?
Yeah, Dune and Dune Part Two. I guess I don't know. It was
Where's
a
our movies?
two-parter. Yeah,
Oh,
I know. I said one of them is movie.
oh, oh. I mean, if we were like going like more, because I was just gonna mention the most recent one, but like one that's also um similar vein like to Foundation is The Expanse, because
Oh
that
yeah.
one, it's so good. It's one of the best sci-fi out there. Unfortunately, there's only 6 seasons, because it's based on a book series that have 9 books plus a bunch of novellas, and it roughly matches. So like one season is one book. Some of the coolest stuff happens in book 7, especially 8 and 9, and those are not filmed. Although like they kind of said they might want to do them at some point in the future. But even then, it's one of the best sci-fi shows. Like it feels real. Like it's a lot of like other sci-fi compared to this ends up feeling like lasers and like little green alien men, like little humans, just kind of like with humans with features. The alien stuff in The Expanse is like proper otherworldly alien. Like it's alien on a fundamental level, but it also deals a lot, like, with impact of things on humans and how humans behave, and in that regard, it's also very realistic. Even the way, they travel, like, through the solar system, it's... oh, what was that?
What?
That was weird. Even that, like, is based on... let me just settle back in. It's based, speaking of alien stuff, it's very good. Like, it feels like this is something that could happen in the future. I strongly recommend that one too. And also, like, I have to mention one of this is older one, but it's the Stargate series. Like, I've watched it like a million times. Watched it here, like, it's an old like classic, and there's so much of it. Like, there's like literally there's 10 seasons of SG1, 5 seasons of Atlantis, 2 seasons of Universe. There's, I think, like 3 or 4 movies. I forget the exact number of them. And like when you watch all of it, like, you're gonna wish there was even more. It's very good. Oh, one more. Orville. Orville. Sorry, kind of getting into this, but like Orville. One thing I really like about Orville, because like a lot of the sci-fi shows that are like more kind of like dark, and Orville, it kind of captures, the spirit of Star Trek, but it feels more modern and more kind of realistic, and it's a lot more positive show. Like, there's like, still serious and bad stuff that happens, but overall it's optimistic show, which like I feel is kind of like missing like nowadays a lot. Like, having positive outlook on the future, kind of the way Star Trek did. And Seth MacFarlane, who like, did Orville, he's a huge fan of Star Trek. So, and you can really feel it, like, and it actually has a bunch of like Star Trek people too. And when I originally started watching it, like, I thought it's gonna be, it's a Family Guy in space, it's gonna be silly, goofy. There's humor in it. The first 2 episodes in particular are like quite heavier on it, but then they kind of tone it down. And it's actually just a serious sci-fi show that deals with a lot of, complex topics and a lot of like, serious things. And they even deal with some stuff like, that I wouldn't expect them to deal with, like, especially in the later seasons, that are like, very serious things, and they kind of deconstruct them in a really cool sci-fi way. Like, I get like chills from some of the episodes, and there's still some humor, but it's kind of cool because, like, like, but I watch Family Guy. Family Guy is like joke, it just kind of keeps rapid firing it. But Orville is like literally can be lots of serious stuff happening, and suddenly something funny is like, and you're not expecting it, and it lands much better, like, it just makes you laugh, but the joke also makes sense, in the context of the scenario. It feels more natural. So like that one's definitely good watch. You should probably move to other things.
500 cigarettes.
500 cigarettes. Happy Arbor Day. I was just gonna be quoting things. Yeah, this is a very good show. I would like the corner piece. And next question's from Yuffie Euphoria. Is there a reason that ints and other real number types are excluded from matrices? TLDR, why there are no int 4x4, etc. The main reason is like there's not really use cases for those, because like usually with matrix computations, you pretty much use real numbers. If there were any, like, if you presented like some kind of like use cases that are actually like, serious use cases, it's not just like, I want to shove integers, for like, I want to use it as a collection for integers or something. If there's mathematical reasons to have integer matrices and you can show us those, we can add them. But right now, I don't really know of any serious uses of those, like where like keeping it like with integer mathematics and matrices, like where it would make sense. So that's pretty much the main reason. Next question, Grand UK, will the higher permission systems likely coincide with data model rework, or would they be far apart in time? Right now, I don't know. It's possible they might coincide. It's possible with data model rework that, like, will place, build some foundations for the hard model, like hard permission system, but right now it's not been decided yet, so could go either way. Resonite is asking, we talking about how things saved on cloud or performance? I'm sorry, I don't remember context of the original question. Sorry to know. What did I maybe be asking?
I have not the faintest idea.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you're asking something in relation to something we're talking about, please include the context with your question, because, when we get to your question, we'll forget if it was, say 30 minutes ago or something like that. Resonate, was there a huge slowdown? I've been hearing that making performance slow because of Unity, having to do all that pass through it. The main reason for slowdown with Unity is because Froox engine is mostly written in C#. And for C#, you kind of need a runtime environment that converts the compiled C# code into native code for your CPU. It also provides a bunch of other functionality, libraries. It provides memory management, lots of things that the program needs to run. Unity, in order to run that code, it uses an old version of Mono. And Mono, even if you take the latest versions, it's way, way slower. It's not very good at, converting that code into native code, and it doesn't have very efficient implementations all of those supporting functions. And Unity in particular uses older versions which are even slower, and uses garbage collector for the memory management that's not been designed for something of this complexity. And because of that, it actually it slows our code down pretty significantly. And that's the reason we want to move Froox outside of Unity, so we can run it with modern .NET 9 framework. Well, I shouldn't be saying framework. With modern .NET 9 runtime, which is at least order of magnitude faster, for the same code. We've already done the with the headless. That's given us a lot of really good data. The headless oftentimes you could be chugging in the graphical client, but the headless is just stable, 60. We had it be at stable 60 frames with 44 people in a session with full avatars. So it was computing, all the IK and everything, and it just kept going. So there's a pretty big, performance boost that way. There's a video on our YouTube channel, specifically, talking about performance update a bit more in detail. I do recommend giving it a watch. We don't also, thing I'm going to show, we don't, for the performance, the big performance update, we don't need to fully get rid of Unity just yet. Just moving Froox engine out of Unity, that should provide big improvement, for CPU usage. Eventually, we do want to replace Unity, which is going to provide even additional performance benefits, but it's not like a blocker. So once Froox engine is moved into its own separate process, even if we're still using Unity for the rendering, that will provide significant speed up. And there's going to be even more in the future once we do get rid of Unity completely, which is also going to open up other features. Next question is from Bitcrack IGN. What stage is the audio rework at? Last thing I heard was Sarah was doing A/B testing reverb. What's the next for the audio system specifically? So right now, Sarah has done the work on the reverb library and making sure we have mapping from all the reverb settings to the new ones. The system itself is not other than the reverb, there hasn't been any coding yet, but I've been doing a bunch of research, I've been doing a bunch of planning on how it's gonna work. So I do have the general kind of design of it, how it's gonna be approached. I've been doing research into Steam Audio and its API, how do we integrate with it. So it's kind of at this kind of stage. And I'll be starting the actual implementation work and do putting some of the design bits, to solidifying them, pretty soon. So there's gonna be I'm gonna be probably focusing on finishing up the Gaussian splats this week, but I might even start the work coding on the actual audio system within this week as well, depending on how the Gaussian splats go. But yeah, it's pretty much the next step is solidifying some of the design parts, and then actually implementing it and then doing the replacement. It's also some more research. Usually it's a transition. So we start design phase, then solidifying design, start implementation, and as things come up, some of the design changes along the way. Yuffie Euphoria's asking, once Resonite implements its own solutions to problems, will it become easier to iterate and add functionality in the future? Yes, I mean, this has already happened like a number of times. Actually, like, with Photon Dust, I'm gonna bring a thing. So Photon Dust, that's our own, particle system. Let's see. There we go. I'm just gonna bring a thing. Photon Dust is our own particle system, and it replaces the previous legacy system, which was a hybrid between, Froox engine and Unity. And Unity handled most of the simulation, most of the effects, which made it like very difficult for us to, do different things because, like mostly it was kind of black box. Ever since, like implemented Photon Dust, I've been adding like, a bunch of like smaller modules and other things to do new effects, and it's very easy to add them. I've literally felt this way. Like, also sorry for covering Sire. This is literally how I've been feeling, with Photon Dust. Is like, I'm like, I want to make, a cool effect. I can just make it. Reality can be whatever I want. It's, like, it's very liberating whenever we do that, because now we have like a system. It's designed to work specifically with Froox engine, is designed to work with Resonite, is optimized for it. It's like, it makes things so much easier. Like, I've been playing a game that I've gotten from Godly like a few months back for my birthday, and I've been streaming it, and there's been like this cool particle effect. I'm actually gonna show it off. There's been like this cool particle effect, and I was like, Godly was like, "Oh, could you do that with Photon Dust?" And I was like, wait, you could? No, wait, you couldn't. You will soon. And I've literally just implemented a new module for Photon Dust, and I'll just show it. Oh boy, that's my hair. 1 second. I had to fix up things. There we go. Let me find it. I've added a module that lets you apply forces to particles that return them back to their original emission point. And you can essentially make something which... let me just open this up. Let's see, where do we have things? Where's spawn things? World, maybe? Users? There we go, this is gloopy. So watch this. I'm gonna turn it off and turn it on. It explodes, and you see it kind of settles into a shape. So there's a mesh emitter which emits particles, from the surface of the mesh. And then there's like a module called, what is it? Origin radial force. And what it does, each particle remembers the position where it was emitted from. And you essentially use this to make the particle return back to that point. If I turn it off, you see like it kind of just, well, they kind of stop because there's also damping. And once I turn it on, they'll kind of go back. I can apply, other forces, like for example, simplex force, which is gonna do that. And once I turn it off, they return back to the original spot. Let me actually make it weaker. So if I make it, so now I'm applying extra forces on the particles, which is, distorting them, but they're still being returned, to the original spot. If I turn this force off, then it just distorts. I turn it on again. A force is trying to return them, to their original position, and I turn that off, and it just, settles back. And there's literally an effect, in the game where there's like a sphere of particles, and you can distort it, you can be like, and then they will like, return back to the sphere, and you can do this. And literally, it took very little time to add. It was very easy to do. And that's pretty much, where the particle system is at, like, because we now have our own custom one, so now with Photon Dust, reality is whatever I want it to be. So, yeah. Every time I rework, like, we have our own system. Oh my. This is, that's your shirt.
I figured out how to actually make how to like move the origin radial force around by using a constant like linear force.
Yeah.
So I can actually like move it around, and then if I get another one of these,
Can you make it
and I like
distort?
yes, that's actually what I'm going to do.
Yeah, like show the
Uh,
distortion. So this is
let me
literally your shirt right now.
yeah, I literally just emitted like the mesh of my shirt. Um, yeah, so if I turn on, I think it will. I think I'll have a good effect if I do alter direction with like 5. And if I turn that on, so now if I move it around, whoa, oh
Oh, there
gosh,
you
oh no,
go.
it's flying away. No, it's flying away. Hang on, I got it.
No, do
Oh,
like a simplex
sorry.
for. Oh boy. Sorry, why are we?
Okay.
Why are we in a? Why are we in a? Oh my! Oh, that was so weird. I was like, why are we in a particle accelerator made out of your shirt?
Ooh. And then it
That's
like settles
really
back down.
cool. I like how it like.
Here, let me turn these off so you can see a little bit better. Now when I move it around, it like kind
Distorts.
of turns into a cloud and then goes back to normal.
Yeah. And you could do things like, forces like with your hands that like, apply more distortings. Like you can do a lot of like cool effects.
Yeah,
And
like
it's
if I were to take this guy, give it like an inverse squared, like a radial force, and I'll add it to the system. Particle system. Add this right here. So now if I bring this guy close, I think it should work. Yeah.
ooh, there we go. Nice.
Ooh. And then it kind of settles back down into like my shirt shape. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I think it's still being distorted a bit.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's turn the billboard to view. There we go.
Like I'm really happy with Photon does. It's like it's so liberating, to have our own system and be just able to make it do the things we want it to do. There's like another thing I
Turns
kind of
out,
want to add, like for like that would like let you recalculate, the resting position, so you could actually transform multiple things, and you could like do skin meshes too. It's gonna be heavier, but it's also possible because some people wanted to use it, for things like that deform
yeah,
and change, and it's doable, but it requires a bit more time. And there's gonna be a
yeah,
lot
this
more
is
things I'm
funny.
gonna do, for this system. I'm gonna do for this system, in the future. But right now the switch is, kind of back on the performance updates. But we should probably get to more questions because we're
Yes.
starting to run out of time and there's still like a whole bunch. Um, so yeah, let me put things back. But yeah, it's really cool, like, just seeing people do a lot of like, cool things and just being able to like, add new things. It's gonna be similar once the audio system comes in because, for example, we can do, lots of cool effects. Like, we can literally make like sounds, for example, the distance attenuation, we can make it whatever function we want. We can apply, whatever effects, like, we just have full control on the system, and that's very liberating. So yes, it makes things way easier. Next question is from Grand UK. Is there a way to disable a slot per user in Protoflux so I could fire an impulse into a node or somehow drive slots active per user with Protoflux? I'm not fully sure. Like, you can drive things, and if you're driving something and you drive it with Protoflux, you can put like conditions that determine the value of what you're driving, depending on the user it's being evaluated on. But it's being driven for everyone. So like everybody needs to compute some value, and that value can be different for each user. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful because you're essentially you kind of like drives that can be like a mechanism to introduce sort of like intentional desync between users, like make things like different between each user. So you can do that, yeah. Assuming that's what you mean. Next question is from Godley. Does a dynamic value variable driver search the hierarchy for its corresponding dynamic value variable only once up front, and when something variable changes and link to it, or does it happen every tick? Dynamic variables, they will only try to search when something changes. So usually when they move in the hierarchy, they will like kind of change things. If something when the component changes, they will search it. It does not happen every tick. At least it shouldn't generally. Searching, it can be kind of expensive, so the system is designed to only do it when it's needed to do. Carlos asking as a follow-up, if a dynamic variable driver does link and doesn't have to search the hierarchy all the time, does that imply that once it's linked, there's essentially no performance difference between it and value copy? Generally, I would say yes. There might be still a bit of an overhead because it kind of needs to link up with the system, and the system checks all the others. I don't know how the performance compares between value copy and already linked ones. That's something that will need to be profiled. But I would say both of them are gonna be, the performance is gonna be low enough for it not to really matter as much, unless you're doing thousands, dozens of thousands values. When looking at components with generics, what does S in brackets mean? I'm gonna actually pull this out so it's easier to see. So usually this, there's the syntax in C# that's used for generics. S is essentially, it doesn't have to be S, it can be lots of other symbols, but essentially it's some kind of it's the generic type. It's a type where S can be substituted for any type that fits within constraints of the type, for the component. So for example, we have a component that deals, with numbers. Maybe it'll accept for S, it'll accept integer and float and double and float too, and matrices and stuff like that. Or it can be, a component where S is a type of asset, so it can accept, stuff like texture 2D or audio clip or mesh. It's essentially, generic components. They can operate, on lots of different types, and the, whatever letters are in the brackets are the types that you want that particular instance to work with. So there's not a generic answer, what it means specifically, but generally it is, whatever type you want that component to use, and the specific types and their constraints, they will depend on the specific component. Darn Hainas asking, anything being worked on in general to improvement to desktop support? There's not anything big right now. However, we would like to do a lot more for the desktop in the future. Especially making it easier to kind of use a lot of editor functions. So for example, being able to pin the inspectors windows, so you can kind of pin them the way you can in Unity or in Blender, partitioning a workspace, put in multiple screens, stuff like that. Adding more kind of binds, to make it easier to navigate the scene, and just kind of bring it closer to desktop editors. That is planned. There's a video on our YouTube channel that covers this in detail with some diagrams as well. So check it out if you're interested more. I also kind of we would like to improve some of the controls. So for example, we have you can have overlay facets. So for example, we have quick inventory access. We have configure messages, maybe some help information, whatever the current keybinds are, stuff like that. There's some niceties, I want to make it so it's easier, you, for example, hold a key and you can use a mouse to position, the hand, so you could touch things and pet people in the desktop, stuff like that. But it's not being actively worked on right now, because right now the focus is on improving performance. Lucas Rowe is asking, I'm just checking the time. Lucas Rowe is asking, when we do the splitting, will it prevent most crashes that don't generate war dump? For example, when the Resonite doesn't even finish writing log file properly. Also, it's very likely Resonite will restart Unity in case of Unity crash, right? yes, that's the way I want to approach it, is like, in case the render process, which is Unity, crashes, it doesn't bring everything down. It just crashes on itself. One of the reasons why I'm like, for example, with audio rework, I'm really leaning on just having the Resonite process just emit audio, is because we can make it when you do crash, like when Unity does crash, you'll still be able to hear people, you'll still be able to talk to them, but you will essentially, like, you will not see anything for a bit, but it'll spin up on your render process and you're just going to be back where you were. So it's going to be like a momentary interruption. I do think it will make things significantly better in that regard, because right now, like, if Unity crashes, it becomes corrupted, it takes everything down with it. Once it's kind of split, that will prevent from happening. This is actually one of the one of the benefits of multi-process architecture, and it's one of the reasons web browsers do it, because if we have a browser tab that crashes, it doesn't take your entire browser down. It's sort of like, it isolates crashes, and we definitely want to, take advantage of that kind of architecture. So yes, if the render crashes, generally it shouldn't take the rest of the things down, and I think like the main Resonite, Froox engine process is going to be less prone to crashing because it's mostly managed code, and managed code is a lot less susceptible to crashes, especially because a lot of the crashes we get, they're like, from Unity errors, from driver errors, like, really hard things, and the separation kind of puts like, an isolation layer between them. Resonate looks like those particles could do like a dead animation, like we fall apart into particles or objects. I mean, you could do that definitely. Like, you can emit particles, from a skin mesh, so you could make like, so you kind of burst into particles and stuff like that. The system that we showed earlier, what it does specifically, it allows them to kind of return back into the original shape they emitted from. And yes, Modern Baloney actually had like a effect like that. It's very cool. Like, they kind of explode. Let's see. We got 35 minutes left, so we've still got a fair amount of time. There's that one thing I didn't want to talk about with the Gaussian splat, so I'll probably do that like since there's a bit of a gap in questions. But Modern Baloney is asking, out of curiosity, have you ever seen anything about the request on dynamic bone compression squish? I don't remember. I know there's been like a lot, but I don't remember any specifics. I'm sorry. If you don't like, ask anything specifically, like, you can like ask a follow-up question, but I don't remember any specifics right now. Granny, is there any way to get the iAudio source of user programmatically to put their voice elsewhere in a world? Right now, not super easily. Like, I've seen people do it, like, by having them equip a temporary avatar. We might just add a thing for it. The only thing is, like, we kind of wanted to avoid doing that before, like, changing some of the stuff with whisper bubbles. But we might, like, I have to think about it one a bit. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult to add. So we might like end up like adding a system for it. I would check if there's like a GitHub for that. Anyway, with that, right now there's no more questions in the chat. But you're still feel free, to ask any questions you want. We have got about 30 minutes left, so there's still time to answer a bunch of them. But I did want to talk a little bit, speaking of which, I'm gonna let like a few questions to pile up in the meanwhile. I did want to talk a little bit about like, Gaussian splats, because I've been like working on it some more. I've integrated a library that Cyro has supported. There's a file format for Gaussian splats called SPZ by Niantic. It makes them way smaller in Compare System. Like a few weeks back, I asked Cyro, like, can you make a wrapper for this library? Can you prepare it? And Cyro was like, it's simple enough. I can just rewrite it in C#. So he rewrote it in C#, which is now available. It's like open source. So you made it everything open.
Yeah.
Makes it way easier. And I've already integrated it. Like, it works. When you import Gaussian splats, you can even select, if you're not importing them from SPZ, you can choose to recompress them as SPZ, which is going to take way less of your inventory space. So that's gonna be, really cool. You also can just, take a SPZ file, just drag and drop, and it just poof Gaussian splat, and you can view it. So I'll be releasing this pretty much like, this upcoming week. The initial version will not have the VRM compression, which means they'll be kind of heavy. You'll have to be a little bit careful about where you spawn them. I mean, even then, like, they're gonna be still kind of heavy, but I've been porting the VRM compression, which essentially does a few things. One of them is it quantizes the values. So, for example, with Gaussian splats, you have the position, you have scales of splats, you have rotations, you have opacities, and you have colors with spherical harmonics. And it takes a lot of data. Like in VRM, if you just store them as floats, that's something like, I think it's like 260 bytes per splat, which adds up fast. So like for something like 3 million splats, that works out around 700 megabytes of VRAM. Plus you need a few extra buffers for rendering and stuff. So what this does, it essentially, the compression, it takes the values, it quantizes them to smaller data types. As part of the quantization, it computes like it essentially reorders the splat using something called motion reordering, which places splats that are like close to each other, like spatially. It puts them kind of close to each other in the data, and then it computes chunks. So each like chunk of Gaussian splats, it computes the minimum and maximum value, because the values that are like close to each other tend to be similar. Like for example, if you consider say like this desk, if you have a chunk here, and you have like say you take the texture data, it's mostly just shades of brown. Compared to like if you take like a random spot here and then a random spot on the carpet over there, random spot in water, it's gonna be all different colors. So by placing them together, that tends to exploit that sort of local similarity or local coherency. It then like just defines like the minimum maximum value, and it quantizes the values, which reduces how much bytes each one takes, and that like saves a lot of VRAM. The other form of compression it can do is uses it will use like texture compression for some of the data, particularly for the color data, like BC7, which is really good, at compressing colors. And it kind of a similar principle where colors that are next to each other, colors that are close to each other, tend to look the same. So it works really well for that. The last thing it does, and this was probably the biggest part that I had to port, it does something called vector quantization, especially for the spherical harmonics, because they're the biggest part. And the vector quantization, what it does, it essentially looks at all the values in the splat, and it tries to find a smaller set of values that is a good representation for all the values you have in there. And in order to achieve that, it uses an algorithm called k-means clustering. And what it actually means, like k, that's number, of like palette values you want. And then you give it the data, and it finds a way to, group the data together to have a, good representation of all the data. I've actually, the algorithm is like, it's more generic. So like you can essentially throw any data set at it. And in order to test it, I had it generate a mesh, and I saved it because it looked really cool. Let's see, what else? Because I was like, I need to visualize, make sure I didn't make any mistakes, during which I did some small ones, but that didn't prevent it from working. Oh, what? Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, I see. So this is the mesh I made. I'm actually show the whole one, because there's like two spheres. Oh, there it is. So there's like two spheres. I generated data where it was a bunch of 3D points, X, Y, Z. And they were generated around two spheres that are apart from each other. And essentially gave it as an input to the algorithm and asked the algorithm to cluster them. So it kind of, groups them together. And then I generated a mesh where from each original point, I would like, draw a line to the clustered point. And you see, for example, there's a bunch of points here, and they all point to the same point. It's because, there's been a lot of original points, and I asked it to cluster to like something like 16 points. I don't know how many this is. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's 16. 16 points. And the algorithm, it'll essentially, figure out which point, like a set of points, which is closest, to like your original input points. And you can see, like, it kind of made this kind of cool shape. It made both of the spheres, there's no lines between these two spheres because they're far apart. So like a point that's over here, it wouldn't be a good approximation of point over here, so this is working correctly. And also on each individual sphere, they're roughly evenly distributed, so every point, if you consider, the lines to be the error, because this is where the original point is, and this is where the clustered point is, the quantized one, the algorithm tries to minimize the error. It tries to make these as short as possible on average for every point in your dataset. And it kind of did that, you can kind of see that like most of them are relatively short, or as short as they can be. And this is like a really cool kind of visualization. The other way you can also do this, you can actually throw pixel data on it. And if I look in my inventory, I've been like just throwing like, images at it. If you give it just the pixel data, just the colors, what it essentially does, it figures out like a good palette for all the colors, in that image, because it finds, a limited set of colors that can represent all of the colors in the image with minimum amount of error. And I've also like made it so you can actually say that the position of the pixel also affects the quantization. So like if it tries to put pixels that are close together, it tries to cluster them together. And I've been playing around with it, and you can make like really neat things. Let me see. I've had a bunch of samples that I want to show you. So over here, so I've like, just grabbed a bunch of like images and stuff, and I've been like, toying with the values too. So actually, I don't think I have the original here. This one's already clustered, but it's not strongly clustered. So I got an image like this. I just grabbed it, online, and you can see this is like, it has a really nice colors to it. This is already quantized a bit. You can see there's some gradients, but then I told the algorithm to like put a greater weight on the spatial position and essentially quantize it some more, reduce it like more. And look what it did. You see, like now a lot of the details in this one is like reduced, but it still has a lot of the spatial kind of coherence. It's sort of it kind of like paletized it, but also like try to keep the shape of the colors in the original image, and like I think it looks super neat. And it's literally just running it through that algorithm, and this is like the list. I've run a bunch of different images. I've also got the Doom wallpaper. That one is like super neat. So let me see. I think this one's the original. This one's original. So let me just bring that in. So this is from one of the wallpapers for Doom Eternal. And this one, I actually threw it on it because like, I had a file at hand, and it's like big one because I did some like make sure the algorithm works fast. This is 4K image. So this is like, a really cool wallpaper, a lot of detail, a lot of colors. Then I'll bring the quantized one. Let's see. Oh, that's the one that's too much quantized. Let me bring this one in. Give it a bit. It takes a bit to import because 4K, but there we go. And you see on this one, you see like how the colors are now more clustered together, but it still like, looks good, like it preserves, things. And you could do like, additional things like on this later, like dithering and so on, but if you compare to this one, this has like a lot more details for the colors here compared to this one. You see like how it kind of like averages them. But even this, even though it has fewer colors, the colors are still a good representation of the data in the image. Like it still looks close. And then as I kept increasing, the weight of the positions, so it would like, it had less kind of colors to work with. At some point it did this, once it loads. Look at that. So you see the colors are kind of starting to cluster together, but it kind of keeps, the shape in some areas, like it still kind of stays if it's close enough, and like it just kind of looks like a cool abstract art. And we're just kind of having like, fun playing with it. And then I increased it even more, and it's just like, once the influence of the position of the pixel is too big, like it kind of tends to mostly ignore the color. But it's still like, we'll still find a color that's like a good approximation for them. And it just ended up like, with this kind of mosaic thing where it just looks like a Voronoi. I did like one more thing, like I've actually like animated the process for an image. So it's one picture of me and Glitch from art, like from Dinger. And I generated like a video of this one, and if I animate it, if I play it, let's see. You can kind of see it like, clustering more and just turns into mosaic and then back. I found it like super neat. And this is just, like I've implemented the algorithm, purely for Gaussian splatting, but I was like, oh, it's like useful for a lot of other things. You can just throw stuff at it and make things. So once that comes out, I've actually, because I had so much fun playing with it for textures, this is gonna be exposed as a protoflux method. You can call it and you can like, give it whatever parameters you want. Although like if you do weird ones, it might do weird things or explode. And like, you can kind of play with it yourself and make like, all kinds of cool images. Plus, I'm kind of thinking we could like use it, for procedural meshes and other things. So like it's super cool to have this algorithm in place. But yeah, that's the ramble I wanted to have. We have 20 minutes left. There's some more questions, so we're gonna go through them. But I'm excited I'm both excited for the Gaussian splatting because like it's been like one of my kind of pet projects I really wanted to do for a while. And now like there's another algorithm. Every time there's more algorithms added to Resonite, it's like it's like the tool set that can be then used for other things. It grows. So I'm like, very, very happy with it. And you can do cool things like this. Sarah's eating the mesh.
I want to eat these.
Don't eat them. The spike. Gonna get more slip drips.
Oh. Don't make me laugh.
I'm sorry. But laughter is the best medicine. Unless you have a slip drip.
Laughter hurts. It's painful.
Anyways, let's go back to the questions. So Modern Balloon is asking, on the topic of dynamic bone compression squish. Basically, dynamic bone squish. Squish is just stretch in reverse. I want to have a feature where you're able to make dynamic bone squishy, so it shows up. I mean, I would make like a GitHub issue about it. Like, the question is like, how do you do it? Because like, where did my brush go? Did I eat my brush? I had a brush, I don't know where it went.
I didn't eat it.
There might be one over there. Do I have a brush over there? No. Let me find my brush.
Yes, there is one. Got it.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I could move over there, but like this is gonna be just a quick drawing. So, so if you have like a chain, actually no, never mind. I don't want to do that. If you do want to do like a chain, so like you have bone here, bone here, bone here, bone here, zoop, zoop, zoop. So like if you grab it, one problem is like it's a little bit like there might be ambiguity like with how you want the squish to work, because say you hold it here and you move it here, you move your hand like down. Should it like because the bone can do like two things. It can like you could squish it so like each element gets, you know, shorter. Or like, you know, it could, like, if you hold it, like, you know, like it could do something like this where it like bends, you know, which is what it's gonna do right now. Because both are technically kind of potential, like, you know, solutions for this. You could maybe make it so, like, you know, you specify that the bone is at, like, you know, by default it's at extended length, and if it's being held, it'll like, you know, if you move it closer, you know, to whatever the origin is, it'll try to shrink. So like when you hold it, it's almost gonna act like it's already, you know, stretched. So when you put it closer, you know, it like squishes, and then you release it and it goes back to the, you know, resting position. So maybe that could work. I'll say make a GitHub issue about it. Explain, give some, if you can, give some examples, you know, how we want it to be squishing. Like for example, like if you have like, you know, like you want to hold it here and you want to do this and you want it to squish. If we kind of visually see what you want it to do, it makes it a little bit easier to figure out a good solution for it. Or if there's like a GitHub issue, like, you know, and it's missing that information, I would add that information to it. Next question, Alex2PI, surely creating an entire avatar using only this new particle module for rendering would not be responsible, right? And it kind of depends, like so it depends how complex the simulation is. It might not be the worst thing, like there's avatars that might be heavier, because like when I think about it, like, you know, avatars can be really complex. So like if you have like complex geometry, lots of things deforming, like, you know, lots of dynamic bones, having, you know, particles, it's not the worst thing, depending how dense they are. Like if you, for example, start enabling collisions, you have like lots of particles, then yeah, some like it'll get worse than most avatars. But I think you can make a responsible avatar that is made from particles. It also, you know, context specific. Like you can make, you know, goofy avatar, like if you're like in sessions with friends and it's heavier, but you want to show it off, that can be fine. But like don't bring it into like, you know, very heavy session. It's you know, there is a way to be responsible with it. Just check, like, you know, what the performance impact is, how well people run with it, and such. We got 15 minutes, and for a few more questions. Orange C7 is asking, if you're talking about Gaussian splats, I don't think you could move the splats around like that after the fact, could you? Yeah, you can. Like, the order of the splats in the file, it doesn't matter. Like for the rendering purpose, it doesn't matter, because when you render a Gaussian splat, you actually do have to sort them regularly. Like it doesn't have to happen every frame. In fact, the implementation doesn't do it every frame to kind of like avoid it being too heavy. But you essentially have to figure out, okay, like, you know, if there's a bunch of splats, you know, over here, and just like say there's a splat here, there's a splat here, there's another one here, there's another here, there's another here. And you're looking at them, you know, from here, this is your eye, like, you know, you need to sort them so like they render, you know, based on the distance, so they properly overlap each other. Because if you render them, like, if you make this one over here render after this one, then, you know, this one's gonna show, like, it's gonna look like it's on top of this one, even though it's behind, it's gonna look wrong. So like as part of rendering, they are kind of sorted, which means like whatever order they come in the data doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter because you can look at it from over here, and you look at it from over here. Now this one has to come first, and this one has to come last. It's also kind of hard to see on the camera. There we go. You know, because you can be looking at this from any angle, and for every angle they need to be sorted. So like the ones that are closer show on top of the ones that are further away. So like, you know, whatever order they come in the data, like, is irrelevant. Like they do get sorted as part of rendering, and you can reorder them for other benefits, which is like, you know, better compression in VRAM, for example. And next one is Lucas Rowe. Quick question: if you have multiple Gaussian splats in the world, do they properly render over each other? No, they will not. And big part is because of the sorting, because the sorting happens, you know, for each individual splat. So like, you know, like if you have like a splat here, you know, it's a bunch of splats. I'm just gonna do the thing here. And they have another splat over here. I'm just gonna do like, you know, some random ones. You know, have two splats. Each splat is sorted within itself. So like a viewer here, like, you know, it sees the splat, it'll sort each one of them individually, but if you merge them, like one of them is gonna show on top of the other, and it's gonna be whichever one is closer from the center of it. Problem is, you know, if you wanted them to properly render over each other, that would make the algorithm for rendering a little more complicated, because now instead of just sorting the existing data, you actually have to collect all the splats, put them into separate buffer, and then sort that. Which can be done, but it makes things fairly more complicated, and we're not doing that, you know, for the initial implementation. Maybe like down the line we'll do it, but right now that would make things too complicated, unfortunately. There's other certain limitations, you know, with the version of Unity we're using, so this is gonna get ported once we switch to Source, which is gonna make it both more efficient to render them, and also gonna make it easier to, like, you know, do stuff like that. Next question is from Grandy K. Is there a way to get active field of a slot with protoflex or components? You can't get the field itself, but you can. There are like there's like nodes where we can you can set it to be active or not active. But if you want to drive it, like, you know, we can't do that right now like that. Usually the approach is, like, you know, you kind of put whatever target is, you put it into a container that you control. Because even then, like, if you just get the field itself, you're not guaranteed, you know, that, like, you have control over that. Something else might already wanting to be controlled at. So, like, you know, it's not generally super safe to assume that nothing is controlling that. So I'd be kind of, you know, careful with that, and ideally put it like into a container you do control. Next question is from Modern Balloony. I did make a GitHub about it. Also, it's demonstration using VRC squish bones. The squish, you wouldn't need to grab it. It's already just you would collide with it, and the bone. Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Here's the GitHub issue. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't render in the thing. I think Twitch censors it, but okay. Yeah, I was like pressing it. Like, we can figure something out. I'll have to like look at the samples for it. I do want to, like, you know, give Dynamic Bond some more love sometime too. Aegis Wolf, could you let people know not to be too afraid of Protoflex in regards to its performance impact? Protoflex doesn't like people just by existing. It was not doing anything. The Protoflex is just fancy components. Yeah, like, Protoflex is a programming language, so, like, you know, things are as efficient as you make them generally. Usually, like, if the Protoflex is not really being executed, it doesn't really cost you much performance other than, like, you know, using a bit more memory. But usually, like, you would, like, the comparison I like to use is, like, you know, consider just a single 4K texture on the avatar. That's gonna use few megabytes, you know, of your VRAM and RAM, and you would need, like, an inside Protoflex creation to, like, use that much memory. So, like, it's, you know, in comparison, it's not is nowhere like near as bad as sometimes people like think it might be, especially if you know weigh it again, because, like, people don't really think twice about using, you know, a bunch of textures on their avatar, even though, like, they use way more, like, you know, resources just to kind of exist, you know, than something like that. So yeah, it depends a lot, because, like, you can make stuff that will lag a lot with Protoflex, but, like, you know, it's something that can be fixed, and, like, usually you have to be doing something. Like, for example, if you're doing dynamic impulses to the root every single frame, that's gonna be heavy, but, like, you know, you're doing a thing. If it just kind of, like, passively exists, then it doesn't really hurt as much. It depends a fair bit, but the best thing is, you know, you can do is, like, you know, profile your things, like, do, like, you know, test, like, where you spawn a bunch of the thing in an empty world, see, like, what kind of impact it has, and then, like, you know, see what you can do. Like, can you find a different approach to something? with that, that's all the questions. I think we have time for a few more. We have about like 5 minutes left, so depending on the complexity, we can ask some more questions. Oh, Marsha SH is asking, why are some slot-related perplexed nodes have self in their name, such as set self, persistent self? Oh, so the reason for that is because some properties, like persistence and being active, it's like something that's inherited in the hierarchy. So say, you have like your scene hierarchy, you have an object here, and you have like, say one under it. And you have like one here, and you have like under here, and maybe there's another here, and say another here. So if this slot is set to be not active, this is disabled, you disable this one, this means all of its children are not active either. So like the is active status is going to be false for all of these. Even if the slot itself is set to be active. Like if this one is set to active, I'm kind of drawing this backwards, its final result is still inactive because the parent is inactive. But once you activate the parent, once you make this active, then this becomes active again. Then you have another scenario, say like, I'm gonna delete this, say set this to inactive, and you set this one to be inactive as well, and then you activate this one, then this one's gonna be active, this one is gonna be inactive, because like this one is itself inactive, and this one's gonna be active, and this one's gonna be active. So what the self means is essentially just looking, is the property of the slot itself directly, is it set to persistent or not, or is it set to active or not, regardless, of whatever state is it inheriting, from higher up. So like the persistent self and the active self only looks at the property. So like even if you have a scenario, if you have a scenario, like where this is hard to grab, you have a scenario where this is inactive, which means all of this is inactive. If you do slot is active on this one, you're gonna get false because the parent is not active. But if you do is active self, it's gonna give you true because that's just that property, like whatever the property is for that particle slot. So I hope that kind of makes sense like this way. Essentially, by the self value is the value, whatever is the slot set to, regardless of what the currently inherited value is. Let's see. There we go. Next question is from Modern Barloni. Can I send you get a visual link related to Bond's Discord, DMs, or office after office hours? Would it be okay with you? I can, but well, I'll probably let's do it like on the next Resonance because we don't have like much time left. I'll probably not want to look at it now, so like I would bring the issue number to the next Resonance or put it into the Discord questions, and then I can have a look at it. That might be like better way to approach it, because right now, like, I would look into the issue, but we have 2 minutes left, so there's not enough time. Let's see. Lucas Rowe, we talked about Schnuppet before. How do you feel about value copy with write backs to the parent field of slot? Locally, parenting it to different places depending on the user, using different valid in vars. That is something you can do. You can essentially, like, because what you're doing is you're like locally driving the parent. And driving is a mechanism where you can intentionally diverge, the data model for multiple people. The only thing, doing that for parent, you kind of have to be careful because you have to think, who is this slot under on each of the clients, because it can lead to some weirdness, but that weirdness is, for you to deal with when you use that mechanism. Generally, like, it shouldn't be an issue as long as you design your system to like work well. Because driving is an intentional mechanism, and you can drive, you can drive the parent to be like different slot for different users. So that one is fine. With that, we have 30 seconds left, so pretty much gonna end it here. So thank you everyone, who came to the stream. Thank you, for the questions. Thank you for listening, to my Cyrus ramblings. And also congrats to everyone who participated in MMC. I'm very excited to start going through all the projects we've made. I think there's 140 something submitted overall, so there's quite a bit. 144. My goal is to go through all of them. I'm gonna record it. It's gonna be published sometime after the audience voting ends. But I'm very excited to see all the cool stuff we made. Also, thank you very much everyone who's supporting us, both on Patreon and through Stripe. If you haven't, we do recommend switching to Stripe, even if it's on the same tier, because we get more money that way. Patreon takes on average 15%. Stripe takes on average about 5%. If everybody switches, we'll have a few $1,000s more per month, which can we then use to make Resonite better. So for everyone who also switched, thank you very much. It's helping us quite a bit. With that, we're gonna find if there's anybody we can raid. Let's see. We'd like to raid any Resonite streamers. Kai Vulpes is streaming, so we're gonna raid them. This is also just PSA, we do if you stream Resonite, this is a good time to stream because you're gonna get raided. We're gonna look for anyone, especially smaller streamers, because we wanna help everyone. So gonna do Kai Vulpes. Okay, that should be it. Should be getting ready. So thank you very much. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for making cool stuff for Resonite, and we'll see you next time. So see you next time.
Bye-bye.
And say hi to Kai Vulpes from us. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, the button went in the way. There we go. They've been raided.